Welcome back to the channel, guys, and I hope you guys are doing pretty good. So let me just quickly set the premise of this particular video. In today's video, we will be discussing about all the important as well as the expected interview questions for SDET professionals for 2026. Now, 2026 is a very interesting year. And the reason for that is obviously AI. Most of us are using AI tools to do our day-to-day office task. And because of this, there is a fear that if my work is going to be done by AI, is the job that I am doing right now, is it really safe, right? Am I going to be relevant after some time? So that is also something that we will be discussing in today's video. Now, guys, I have been talking to a lot of SDET professionals who are working in MNCs, they are working in startups as well as product-based companies. See, everyone is using AI in their project, but when we are talking about your interviews are still the same as it was for the year 2016, 2017 and 18. Meaning, when you will be giving your SDET interviews, questions related to coding, your programming language, your design patterns, framework design concepts, your testing strategies, all these things will be asked, but in more detail now. Okay? So all those questions, all those interview questions that you used to study from the LinkedIn, from various sites, those PDFs, those prototype answers, they are not going to help you now. Most of the questions are going to be scenario driven, okay? And the interviews are going to be more or like a conversation, okay? So please make sure, guys, that you are aware of your technical concepts as well as you have built the framework properly, and not just the tuchu-fuchu framework which you see here and there. You have to build a framework that you can really brag about it in an interview. Okay. I see a lot of posts over the LinkedIn where people are using Claude Code to generate the framework and all. Kudos, good job with that. But if someone is asking you about the entire code base, will you be able to answer it off? That is the main thing that you should be focusing on. The second thing over here, guys, is see, if you are just going to do a copy paste, you're going to give a prompt to Claude Code or your Cursor or your Copilot, and you just copy the code and you're going to put it in your repository, in your source code, then guys, you're definitely going to get replaced. Your job over there is to make sure that you're reviewing the code, you are checking whether the design patterns, whether the object-oriented principles, along with that, the test and the code, are they clean or not? Now, the thing over here is, you can only understand this if somewhere down in your career, you have built it. Okay? And this is why I feel that this entire transition which is happening is a very interesting one. You still need to be technical. You still need to understand how this thing is working. Okay, how exactly the code is getting generated, whether the code that has been generated, can I really use it in my project? Okay, because you will be taking the ownership of that code. Along with that, you should be having your strong domain knowledge. So yes, interviews are still the same, okay, but in the companies, they will be using your coding assistant tool. Now, the thing is, a lot of time people ask, Jatin, create videos on AI testing tools and all. See, the point over here is, I want to first focus majorly on things that is going to help you with your interviews, okay? If you are not able to crack the job, that other stuff doesn't even really matter, to be honest. You know that, okay? Most of the time, people are struggling to crack the first round. So why to even focus on things? That is definitely a very easy thing. Someone who has a very strong knowledge on programming, someone who has a strong knowledge on design patterns, understands system design, for them, using AI tool is not a very difficult thing. But if your fundamentals are only bad, then what are you going to do? Okay? You will be the first one to get replaced. The competition today for any job interviews is pretty cutthroat. Okay? Now, over here, guys, I have created a document, and in the document, I am just going to walk you through all the questions that you should be preparing for your interviews. Okay? Now, the first thing, an obvious one, is going to be the framework and the design concepts. Now, understand this. This document which I have created, it is not something, a random thing that I have picked it up over the internet and all. No. Over the last 3 months, okay, of the 2026, from January to March, I was checking with all the students of the SDET masterclass who have given interviews, who were able to crack the jobs, okay? And these questions have been selected and kept for you guys. So these are the common questions which have been asked for your SDET interviews. The first question is always going to be about your framework. Okay. Now, over here, I will advise you that you focus on the API testing framework. There is a video that I have already created and kept for you guys. You can check that. The second one is going to be the SDET Foundation Masterclass. All right. These two stuff is going to be helpful for professionals who have like 3 to 5 years of experience, something that you can really talk about. But here's the thing, guys. If you are having, let's say, more than 5 years of experience, or you are someone who is in senior management and all, I would personally advise that you go for the SDET masterclass. Don't go into the SDET Foundation or this the API testing stuff. These are very basic stuff. These are very simple projects, okay? And they are good for beginners. But when you reach a certain level of experience, or in a very particular stage of your career, you need to have projects that you can really brag in interviews. And that's what the whole SDET masterclass is all about, okay? The next thing is going to be, you need to understand how to make a framework scalable as well as maintainable. If I ask you this particular question right now, what are you going to say? How will you make your framework scalable and maintainable? What are you going to say? Now, over here, if you start saying that you're going to manage the locators, okay, or you're going to use design patterns is good. That's obviously one of the answer. But the thing over here is you need to be aware of the major design patterns that you will be using in your project. Most of the time, people are just stuck with singleton design pattern and your page object design pattern. What are the other design patterns? Builder design pattern. Okay, what is the next design pattern? Factory design pattern. Utility class design pattern. So these are the various things that you should be really aware of, and you will be using it in your project a lot. Now, if you just say to an AI agent, or let's say Claude Code, that, okay, you are supposed to use singleton class, but you yourself does not know how exactly this thing works, how it is going to help you, right? So now, most of the people who will be using Claude Code is apparently going to play a very imposter role, right? Because you yourself don't know anything major, and you're using these AI agents to generate the stuff, and then you're reviewing it off over there. Okay. So these people technically have, are technically in the danger zone. So please make sure, guys, don't do that. Make sure that you are giving some decent amount of time on daily basis to get your fundamentals sorted out. Okay. The next one is, how do you make sure that your framework is maintainable? Yes. How do you do that? How do you make sure that you have written clean tests? How do you make sure that your tests are maintainable? What are you going to say? Whenever you are creating a test, your test needs to be as small as possible, right? You should be having less parameters to your test. You should be making sure that the length of the code of the test method is bare minimum, okay? and you're also supposed to use your fluent design pattern when you're calling all the methods. Method chaining, you have seen the rest assured code, right? That's something that you're supposed to do over there. So all these things, you should be really aware of it. The next one is, how will you add new features without impacting existing functionality? Okay. So make sure that you guys are thinking about all these questions, guys. Okay. These are the legit questions. Okay. And these questions which I've kept over here, at least the first couple of one, are technically something which I believe I got a week back or so. So please make sure that you go through these questions. Next is API and integration. How will you integrate a third-party API in your automation framework? Again, a very important one. What approach will you use for the third-party API integration? What is serialization and deserialization? Oh, come on, this is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? Converting a Java object into JSON object is serialization. The reverse, the ulta. You're converting your JSON object into Java object is deserialization. How do you do that? Which library is going to be used over there? Your Jackson library, object mapper class. I hope you guys know that part. Why do you need serialization and deserialization? What problem did you face that required serialization and deserialization? I'll tell you what, these were all the questions which I was supposed to cover for that 90 days SDET interview preparation series. But the irony was, you guys never really loved that series. Anyways, dynamic data handling. How will you handle APIs with dynamic responses? This is again a very important one, guys. So please make sure that you're preparing it off. How will you make your framework secure? This is again important. And these are all product-based company questions, guys. How will you handle SSL certificate? How will you test private APIs? Okay, not publicly exposed. How will you implement caching in API in your automation framework? People who have been studying with me in the SDET masterclass, we have already covered all these things. Caching, okay, how to implement caching in the framework. How will you test the caching behavior? This is important. Okay, this is important. Architecture and execution. What is client-server architecture? What is serverless architecture? How do you run your automation local versus the cloud? So people who have saw the API automation framework, which is there on the YouTube, I have done that. The Telit one is also pretty good, SDET Foundation Masterclass. The main framework which we have in the SDET Masterclass. Please make sure, guys, you go through that. That is also going to be a very helpful for you guys. Now, I don't intend to really release that particular project for public, and there's a very obvious reason for that. The reason over there is, if sometimes, I'm releasing a major project out over there, everyone starts putting it off in their resume, right? The same project. There was this one guy who literally just downloaded the zip from my repository and uploaded it into his. Okay? And he did not even change the owner name. So whenever I visit his repository, I can see my name present over there. So the thing over here is, you have to build project, guys. You can't take shortcuts. Okay. So please make sure, dedicate some time daily to build projects. Okay. Next over here, what is your execution approach as well as process? How is your exact entire automation framework getting executed? These things you should be really taking care of. Now, there were some hands-on coding questions also. Okay. Given a large API response, you're supposed to create POJO classes. String manipulation questions. So obviously from coding rounds, you're supposed to definitely prepare for string array maps. Okay. These questions are something which will be asked a lot. And even on this particular channel, I think there is like a 9 hours or I think so 10 hours of video which is there where I'm covering all the important questions. Okay. More recent questions have been part of the masterclass itself. The next one is the difference between the primary key and the foreign key of your database. I think so this is a bare simple question. Test data management and security. How will you manage the test data in your framework? With the Faker library. Okay. Most of the time when you are writing or you're going to do a data-driven testing, right? based on my experience, it is always better that you use a faker library. Okay, managing test data in Excel, your CSV, okay, your JSON, it's fine, okay, but long term maintenance is pretty high over there. When you're using faker and all, during every execution of your test, it is going to use fresh data. Okay, so in this way, the maintenance of your test data reduces a lot. So that is something that you really need to start incorporating it. You can definitely have the other utilities created and kept, but the main thing is you should be relying on fakers more. How will you store secure sensitive data like passwords in DB? How do you do that? Okay. How do you do that? There is an encryption that happens over there. You're not supposed to directly store the password. Okay. So how will you encrypt and decrypt the test data? Okay. The next one is, if the data in database is encrypted, how will you decrypt and use it in testing without exposing it? Yes. How are you going to do that? Take a moment, think about it. These are the questions that you should be preparing for. Okay. Now, I guess these were the major questions that was asked, like, and I wanted to only select some questions for you guys. So these 25 questions, please make sure that you prepare well. Now, some of you guys have asked me about the salary range and all that is happening. So based on my understanding and how exactly I have done the research, if you're someone with 2 to 4 years of experience, you should be aiming for at least 12 to 15 LPA. 5 to 8 years of experience, 20 to 32. And these numbers are something which I have seen students getting it off. Students who have been studying with me. 8 years and above, they have literally crossed 30 to 40 LPA. There was one student, okay, who was the part of the SDET masterclass, and he technically cracked like 65 LPA. 65 LPA, SDET role. Okay. But the thing over here is, over there, his work involves a lot of things. Okay. He needs to work from the development side. He needs to do the testing also. He's also managing the entire pipelines and all. So yes, as I've said in the older videos also, the roles are going to get collided. It's going to get merged. The boundaries are going to get fade now. Literally, they're going to fade. So if companies are going to hire new candidates, new employees, they will make sure that all 36 ke 36 gun need to match. Okay. So you need to be good with coding, you need to be good with your testing fundamentals, you need to be good with your testing, your libraries, okay? You should also be good with system design. You should understand how to create and manage and scale a framework from scratch. And the irony of all these things, now, you can't mug this thing up. It is only going to happen when you have built the project, okay? Only if you are building the project, you will be able to pull it off. Else, you will just end up rectifying all the answers before the interview. And during the interview, if the interviewer just changes the question, you will say that, Jatin, I get blank when answering the questions. Okay, that's something which happens. So anyways, these are the weightages. Like if DSA, you can expect like around 30%. Okay. And logic building questions, whatever I've covered, please make sure that you go through that. Arrays, strings, as well as recursions questions have been asked a lot. I've just kept a couple of questions over here. Reverse a string, palindrome, longest substring, arrays, problems, all those things. Please make sure that you do it. Selenium playwright questions are, I think, 15-20% they will ask. Okay. Sometimes they will tell you to write a locator. They're going to give you a complex website. Okay. How do you manage weights, drop down? And I'm not talking about the basic drop down over here. I'm talking about the React components and all. So that is something that is going to be asked a lot. API testing, again, from the framework, you can expect the questions. Postman, your end-to-end execution over there, challenges that you have faced while doing API testing, all those things you can really get a lot of questions over there. Framework design and architecture, your automation framework, scalability, all those things, expect a lot of questions over there. Core Java, yeah, I think it's going to be there. Java fundamentals used, your object-oriented programming concepts, collections, exceptions, questions. Okay. Testing concepts, test cases, test scenarios, test strategy. Please make sure that these are the bare minimum things. I guess you can really do that part. So I'll still gonna give like around 8% questions I've seen like have been popping up from this section. DevOps, pipelines related questions, Jenkins related questions, your Git flow, your GitHub actions. Okay, how do you set up your CI/CD pipeline? Okay, the branching strategy which has been used in your project. Okay, so again 5% over there. Database testing has been a little bit less, so around 3% you can expect a question over here and there. Queries, okay, joins, database validation. How do you do database validation in your test automation framework? That is something again which is very important. Performance and system design related questions are something that you will definitely be asked. Bottleneck, scaling, as well as monitoring. Okay. Um, Please make sure that you're preparing for your distributed systems related questions. That is again going to be asked a lot. Microservices related questions have been asked a lot for candidates which were having experience like around 12 years and above. Okay. Then again, behavior driven questions. Okay. The experiences, challenges that you faced in your project, automation framework, teamwork, and all those things. Okay. Your past projects. Okay. Problems that you have faced. So those questions are again going to be asked in your final round. So these are the things I would say that you should definitely be preparing for your SDET interviews for 2026. Now, let me just address the elephant in the room, which is, was there any questions related to AI? I'm gonna be very straightforward. The answer was no. Okay. Now, the thing over here is the time that I've spent with Claude Code, your cursor, as well as your codex, I've realized one thing, that if you're good in your domain, if you are aware of how exactly your application works in a certain domain, you have a solid domain knowledge, okay, AI is going to be really helpful. It is going to act as an assistant to you. Okay, this is something which is important. Now, become so good at your domain that AI becomes your assistant, not your replacement. You should be aware of everything in your application. You should be aware from the system design, the problem that your application is trying to solve. Okay. If you're aware of those things, you will be an asset. Okay. You will not be a replacement. AI is always going to be a multiplier and assistant for your work. The main expertise that you bring at your work is always going to be domain knowledge and the ability to anticipate future problems. So if you are able to predict the future problems that can happen in your existing application, AI is definitely going to be your assistant. You will be thriving in this entire AI era. Now, make sure to ask the right questions to AI, validate whether the output is correct or garbage, and this can only come from experience. Like if I'm talking about code review, I can only validate whether the output, whether the code is written properly or not, whether I can use it, whether I need to do some kind of a customization. These things will only come with experience. Add real world constraints, the performance, scalability, and edge cases. So whenever you are using Claude Code, your codex or cursor, give it a constraint that you want your application to, let's say, handle 1 million requests, or probably it should be able to handle, let's say, thousands of concurrent requests, so on and so forth. So these are something that you should really be aiming for, or you should be remembering it whenever you are creating or writing any prompt. Okay. So these are the things that I wanted to discuss in today's video. Do let me know whether this particular video was useful for you guys. And in case you are interested in the SDET Masterclass, the link of that particular stuff is also going to be in the description section. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Do let me know in the comment section what should be the next video be. Okay. I'm going to see you guys again. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.